Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell making some of his first comments on that bipartisan deal on gun reform. Our team there, as the Republican leader, gave his blessing to the framework, right? The framework of the deal in the last hour. Watch.
For myself, I'm comfortable with the framework, and if the legislation ends up reflecting what the framework indicates, I'll be supportive.
So listen, that is good news for the Democrats who need at least 10 Republicans to vote for this bill so that it passes. With the senators working on this, hoping to get actual language, Sahil Kapoor, who is joining me now, our congressional correspondent, they want to get the language done, the text written, and this thing passed as soon as humanly possible. You know, a lot of people were waiting to hear what McConnell had to say on this. And he did say if the bill ends up reflecting the framework, as you heard, he'll give it his blessing. Here's a little bit more of what he said, talking about specifically support from gun owners for what we're seeing here.
Support for the provisions of the framework is off the charts, overwhelming. It's a step forward on a bipartisan basis, and further demonstrates to the American people that we can come together.
So, Sahil, how significant, how much does it matter that this is what we're hearing now from Mitch McConnell as it relates to the broad support, the framework, the passage potentially of this bill?
Hallie, McConnell's support is a major boost for prospects of turning this framework into a bill and ultimately making that a law, for the simple reason that we've seen time and time again in the 50-50 Senate. McConnell's support tends to be a reflector of whether a bill can get the minimum 10 Republican votes needed to defeat a filibuster. It's one thing for 10 Republicans to sign on to a framework. It's another thing for them to vote for a bill. And that's where McConnell has been so crucial in this type of effort, especially on hot-button issues like gun legislation. McConnell has been an ardent opponent of any new gun control laws going back decades. It was about only a decade ago when the Sandy Hook Elementary School massacre happened. McConnell took to the floor. He extended his thoughts and prayers. He called it a uniquely awful tragedy. And then he used the filibuster to block any new efforts at gun legislation. Things have really dramatically changed in the last decade, Hallie. And McConnell in particular, one of his incentives here, he's talked about how Republicans need to be doing better in the suburbs. He said he was disturbed by how poorly they did in the suburbs in 2020. What do polls say suburban voters want? Stricter gun laws. What do polls say women and college graduates want? Stricter gun laws. McConnell can read those polls as well as anybody. And the final point on McConnell here is that he has felt the need to release some pressure on those who would like to nuke the filibuster. And he does that by allowing a modest, popular, bipartisan piece of legislation to pass every so often and say, see, the Senate does work. We don't need to make drastic changes. Now, all of that said, Hallie, this is still not a done deal yet.
That's right.
People who are working on this deal are trying to write the bill to avoid these landmines, specifically concerns among Republicans that it has ample due process that, before it takes away gun rights from anybody. Let's have a listen to what some Republican senators had to say about that.
I just think that it infringes on the Second Amendment due process, and it crosses crosses the line too often.
There are real concerns about due process, and I think those are things that are going to have to be addressed.
As long as due process, Second Amendment protections are afforded to those who would fall under a red flag law, I'd be okay with it.
Now, reading between the lines there, Hallie, this is not going to get unanimous Republican support. Many will vote against it, pretty much no matter what it does, because they don't want to touch any gun regulations. But McConnell's support does give this a real path to getting not just 10, but as many as 20 or 25 Republican senators.
Sahil Kapoor live for us on the Hill with that piece of news. Sahil, thank you.